Brett. Thank you so much for joining us here. It's another episode of Jolly SEO's TLDR. I have known you mostly through email. We've had a few calls over the years. This is Brett Farmiloe, founder of Featured. We are, I like to think, early adopters, longtime advocates. I've shared about Featured in a Backlinko article recently on the stage in Brighton and Shenzhen and Bangkok. I'm just so curious today to share your side of the story because I'm over here talking about what I know of Featured, but I'm on the outside. So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And happy to share a little bit more about the journey and be hopefully helpful to the audience here. So you want me to jump into the backstory?
I'd actually love to know that because just for the audience's sake, I am a failed agency to SaaS kind of transition. It was like a classic thing 5, 10 years ago. Oh, you run an agency? Well, why don't you do a software? And Morgan and I invested 3 years and a couple $100,000, and the software is still alive, but we couldn't do what you have pulled off here. And I remember meeting and being an early adopter, and you at one point even opened up, I don't know if you ever took investment, and you stunned me with your foresight because you're like, no, as an early user, that would be a potential conflict of interest if we IPO in the future. So I can't have you guys invest. And I was like, all right, well, that's why we're failing. Like you're thinking on totally different levels than we were. So yeah, I'd love to know like what was going through your mind when you made that transition because it was levels beyond what I was thinking about.
Yeah, definitely. Just to back it all the way up, I ran a marketing agency for 10 years. I had no intention to make it an agency. It was just kind of a freelance thing for me for about 4 years. And then I got the website to rank on page one of Google for the term digital marketing company. And at that point, started getting calls from all over the world of people who were discovering quote unquote my digital marketing company. It was me and my dog. And so I started to max out on clients and then started hiring employees to service those clients. Flash forward, we try to be all things to all people and be a digital marketing company, which to me was email marketing, social, PPC, SEO, website building. Eventually, after about 2 years, specialized in search engine optimization, did content development, digital PR, and technical SEO for small businesses. So we serviced over 500 SMBs. And essentially, the hardest thing for us to do was the digital PR component. How do you get a small business owner placed in an article and help them build their visibility online? And so ultimately, we created what was at the time called Turkle as a just in-house product for us to take our clients, ask them questions that spoke to their expertise, because we had clients that range from equipment financing to eyelash extension supplies to you name it. And basically what I learned is that small business owners have an abundance of knowledge to share, but nowhere to share it. And so Turkle was originally created as an outlet for those small business owners to share, to get their insights placed. Flash forward, basically Turkle started to get more traction than the agency, decided to sell the agency at the end of 2021 and just jump into what's now Featured full time in 2022. So here we are about 3 years in, and it's been a crazy journey.
Yeah, wild. Wait, so you had the clients, they needed an outlet. Does that mean Turkle as an in-house tool? Already you had some publishers that were hungry for those contributors' expertise?
Yeah, early on, and you talked about how do you create a marketplace? Like
Yes.
there's always a hard side of the marketplace. The hard side of our marketplace is publishers. How do you find websites to, essentially wave their hand and say, hey, we want some content, and can you create some great high quality content for us? So initially, that marketplace was seeded just with like my own network, my own personal connections, reaching out to, having been in the space for over a decade. It's reaching out to other website owners, other content managers, and just hitting them up to say, hey, would you try it? So it doesn't happen very quickly. It's a lot of sheer effort and relationships and things like that, but that's how it initially got started.
Yeah, I'm just, like I said, sympathetic. That was for all of our areas that we failed, that was the most challenging and the area where I dragged my feet the most was accepting that if I don't get the publishers on board and we're always beholden to other sources, we're never going to be independent. And that's where you guys have really excelled. And I think really quickly started competing with the Helper Reporter that's now dead, with the Connectly that's now dead, platforms like Quoted, right? You got in there and you got the publishers, which to do that though, you have educated me on, which I learned but didn't really fully adopt, but that is also what killed it. You have to have enough contributors, like enough varied contributors, because the publishers aren't going to come back if they're not getting contributions that matter.
Yeah. One of the most interesting case studies that really inspired us was Cameo. So if you know Cameo,
No.
you can essentially pay for a celebrity to film a short video, and so anything from a happy birthday video to
Yes.
you name it. And so
We had a
Cameo,
friend, actually Morgan, my buddy, for a friend's birthday, paid that the guy who did the pedophilia series for one of the Dateline, I think, did a quick cameo on a friend's voicemail.
exactly. So their go-to-market strategy was focus on D-list celebrities that are huge, like that guy
Yeah.
who is a huge deal to like 10 people, and they're like huge fans of that person. So focus on all the D-list celebrities, and ultimately you get to the C's and the B's, and then the
Yeah.
A-list celebrities like Snoop Dogg. So for us, it's similar strategy. Our first industry vertical was human resources, and so we attracted, sites like the Society for Human Resource Management, TLNT.com, ERE.net, all these different sites that if you're in HR, you've heard of. And so basically, it's a huge deal for an HR professional to be featured on TLNT.com. And it doesn't matter to the 99.9 other percent of people, not really, but it's a huge deal. To see the marketplace, you kind of have to have initial focus and traction. And for us, it was HR. And since then, we've gravitated over to other markets, marketing, technology, finance. Now we're getting into home and garden, and each one becomes a little bit easier to enter into.
Yeah, the analogy there is almost everywhere in life, right? Like there are people who just shoot for the, what is it, shoot for the stars, and if you miss, it would land on the moon. But a lot of us, you work your way up, building blocks. Like you start small, whether it's clients or in link building, it's you got to work with smaller sites, build up your own site's authority, and then the bigger sites will recognize you. I can only imagine it's similar with the publishers.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is with publishers is you got to prove it. You got to prove that it works, right? A lot of what our early success has happened is just the success of the content.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people talk about, oh, include, expert insights with the EEAT stuff in your content, and then it'll start to take off. We've been pretty fortunate to like have firsthand experiences of that to
Yeah.
see from a publisher perspective, if you do a content refresh and you insert one or two expert quotes, what kind of A/B test does that have versus something that doesn't include that and you just manually update it. So a lot of how we've won over publishers has just been in proof and performance, and it's been pretty cool to see some of our articles be top performers on different sites.
What, because you're trying to balance both sides, and I'm trying to think about the best way to ask this question, but I wanted to either ask what's the most challenging of managing the publishers versus the contributors, though you kind of just mentioned it with the publishers, but what's the unique challenge you face? Is it just constantly a balancing act where one time your attention's on one side, one time sometimes it's on the other, or is there like a central almost like mission where you're bridging that? That was something I couldn't figure out when I tried to accomplish this software.
Yeah, I think that the thing that unites both sides is our mission statement to unlock new knowledge.
Yeah.
So publishers want to share new, interesting information with their readers, and experts want to share their expertise, and oftentimes they just don't have an outlet to share that. So as long as we're doing that really well for both sides, allowing publishers to surface new knowledge and for experts to share that knowledge by matching them with personalized, interesting questions that they want to answer. That's our core challenge. How do you match up a new question with the right expert? How do you ultimately deliver the best insights over to those publishers so you can accomplish that mission?
You do something that not all of the platforms do. I could be wrong about saying none of them do, so I'm not going to say that. But you do something where you require the contributor to have a LinkedIn profile and a headshot, unless I'm mistaken on the second one. And I know this because, again, Jolly is still an active user, and we plan to be for years to come, right? So every client we get to represent, they need to be, and this is something that I'll admit, a few years back, we still had a few clients playing the game of the fake persona, right? The owner wanted to be in the background and not out there on the internet. But we've all seen, at least most of us have seen the shift. And frankly, I'm grateful as a consumer. I want a fourth estate where there's transparency and legitimacy. There's real people contributing real knowledge. I'm just curious, from your perspective, for the publishers, what's the priority? Is it that it's the person is legitimate, or is it that the quality of the content is superior because AI, LLM wrapper writing tools has been kind of hot and cold for the last couple of years? Or is it both those, or is it something else entirely? Like what? because we run a Facebook group with a couple publishers as well, and quality of content seems to be a big one. I'm not sure what's the biggest
Yeah, I
concern.
think it's both. I think it's both. Like you got to have both to be really successful. And if I were to just choose one, I think it goes back to the person. Who are you quoting? Because ultimately you could have one of the best insights, but if it's coming from a source that maybe doesn't have the track record, the experience, some of those credentials, then I think that a publisher would rather feature someone with those creds. And you mentioned AI usage and doing some of that. Like I think that quite honestly, going back to the vision of unlocking new knowledge, um, the biggest challenge that experts have is mainly a time issue. How do you find the time to share your knowledge in meaningful ways? So going back to like, is AI usage, it's really early on that. And I think that the most important thing is the digital signature of someone signing off and pressing submit. So if you have the credentials and you're being the verification in between that, for publishers, that's probably what's most important.
Yeah, it's really interesting representing clients in outreach because and I speak on this topic at conferences, and I always run into people who are adamantly opposed to any form of ghostwriting, which I always tell them I completely respect. That's nothing for me to convince you that there's something morally okay or it's that it's ethical. However, not all of our clients are trying to be famous. I'm not trying to say that, but everyone famous we know has a ghostwriter of some form, right? Whether it's for a book or a speech they're literally reading teleprompters, all these things. So like I do respect it, but it's a time, what you said. And I also say it's a bit of expertise just in the writing side, because not all subject matter experts are also excellent writers. And it's intimidating for a lot of them. And I mean, you see tons of very successful people who say straight up like, "Oh, I don't read because I'm dyslexic," or "I don't, that's doesn't mean they're an idiot. They're not great with letters and words. That's the way it is." So yeah,
Yeah, we see a lot of that. I could vouch for that. True industry experts who, when it comes to crafting a usable quote or a usable answer, that's a skill that they generally lack. So, having some writing assistance to put your knowledge into a digestible, consumable format is definitely like an area that a lot of people need help with.
yeah, speaking and recording, right? I'm not a pro at this, so I was nervous coming into this. It's tough for a lot of people come to us to put their thoughts down and then hit that button, like you said. It's a imposter syndrome, all these things. Really cool. Thanks for sharing the current challenges. I mean, I think the last little bit I'd love to hear from you, but that's just my side. Then I want to hear if there's anything I missed, is any preview into where the platform goes from here. Like I said, one of the things that struck me when I met you was the fact that you're looking further ahead than I was managing to when I was trying to do this. So anything you can share that's on the roadmap?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the years ahead are really around having more places to get featured. So,
Yeah.
for us, it's we've done a lot of innovation in 2024 where we've offered new content types that allow people to share their knowledge in different ways. So, we went from just a question and answer platform where you're sharing knowledge in 4 to 8 sentences to now you can author a full-length article and get that placed in more than 1,000 different publications. So that's one example of how we're allowing people to share knowledge in different ways. I think that as you continue to evolve as a platform, you've got different media formats that you could go from. So right now we're just text. What happens if you can throw a microphone button on featured and allow people to do audio or video, or maybe AI becomes an acceptable way to share knowledge, and there's different ways that you could take an existing knowledge base and really like multiply your efforts in terms of the knowledge that you could share. So I think that it's a very, very interesting landscape from a publishing perspective. Search has dramatically changed. Search traffic has dramatically changed. Publishers are dramatically changing. So it's really hard to predict like where we're going as a business. And I think that the thing that I'm trying to do as a founder is figuring out where what the world looks like and where can we drive the most value. So I think a lot of my answer depends on a lot of different things that could potentially happen. For us, it's just staying true to the mission because we believe that people always will have knowledge to share. They have a need to share their expertise that's been around in humanity for millions of years to share knowledge. And so as long as we do that well, I think that we'll find our fit.
Yeah, yeah, you do an amazing job of navigating that. Just for the listener, I this isn't like a pump Brett and featured episode. There's things that I disagree with that you've done with the platform that I voiced to you, and that's another thing I think you excel at is customer service. Like you take the time, explain why you're doing what you're doing, and that's obviously as a user, I just need to use the platform that you're making, right? But you also listen to our feedback and build features just directly from the feedback, which is really cool. I'm
Yeah,
curious.
honestly, just real quick, that's my favorite part of my job is talking with people who use the platform. We've got over 40,000 people who use it right now. And I love being up on LinkedIn in my inbox on a Zoom call. I've seen a lot of successful founders. Like one of my biggest inspirations, I went to MailChimp a number of years ago and got to spend time with their co-founders and just listen to how they spend their time. And a lot of their time is spent at a desk over the shoulder of watching someone use MailChimp, at a dinner, talking and having some wine with the customer and talking about how do they use MailChimp, how do they hear about it. And the closer that you can get to a customer, I think the better product that you develop. So to your point, like that's my favorite thing to do. And also the most important thing that I do. I try to have about 20, 25 different customer conversations a week and just learn about what we could do to better support people in their business.
Yeah, I think that's a lot I could learn there as a business owner, right? Every time I find that my business is in decline, I'm in a little mastermind. They're very good about being like, how many customers have you talked to this month? And I'm like, I haven't talked to a customer very recently. That's probably the problem, right? So yeah, you can't check out. It's fun to think that you can force of will your way through the world, but we are connected and you mentioned all the external things like Google, the different search platforms, frankly, the GPTs of the world, Claude, but your customers, right? You got to adapt to their needs. So makes sense. What did I forget to ask that you came in here thinking like we should at least cover this because that's why I'm here. I want to learn from you.
Yeah, I mean, not a whole lot. Like I could talk about featured, I could talk about what's happening in the industry landscape with expert insight platforms like ours. Um,
We'll talk
but I
about
guess
that.
like
What's like where's feature's place in this? Like what's happening in the landscape? I mean, right at the point of recording, we just saw not just Haro's death, but now its successor connectively. They're just shutting down, right? So that's a
yeah,
big wave.
yeah, and I think that one's less about like I think that it's been pretty noisy online about that.
Yeah.
A lot of people have different takes. My personal take is just the economics caught up with the platform. I
Yeah.
think that when it was originally created, the business model was newsletter ads, and newsletter ads brought it to 1 million in revenue. They sold it for 1.6 million in cash in 2010 to Vocus. Vocus was a $92 million company at the time. They, over the course from 2010 to 2014, when they merged with Cision, they doubled their revenue. They used Haro probably as a lead generation so that they could upsell different PR agencies to their services. Cision and Vocus merged. And so all of a sudden, revenue went from like 100% when it was just independently ran to 1% of revenue to now when it's a merger with Cision and Vocus and it's $1 billion company, now it's like a tenth of a percent of revenue. And with the need for internal resources to be devoted to running the service. And so I think that like purely from like a black and white perspective, I think that it got shut down not because it wasn't successful, but because its place within Cision is the sense that they could take those internal resources, put them to another product that's generating a ton of revenue for them and be able to multiply their company. So I think that for it's just a business decision. And I think that it's more than that for a lot of people because there's a personal connection to it. It's like 15 years of usage and there's some really good memories. Everyone remembers like the first placement that they got on the platform. They remember the good old days, the bad days. So it's just a platform that a lot of knowledge was shared, a lot of effort was done, a lot of trials, a lot of like personal growth that you may have seen as a marketer. So I think that it's sad, but I also think that it's just like purely economical.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe and I could echo, or I would say I represent a lot of what you just described, right? Like we built this little company off of that outreach when I had to freelance doing that. So yeah, it can be emotionally charged, but maybe you were going to go a different angle when I said we'll talk about that because you're in the mid sentence, but I was like, Brett's willing to share. That's what I'd like to know. But
Yeah, no, I just think that it's an interesting footnote of where we're at right now and the end of 2024 and that decision. We'll see. I think that there's a couple of interesting directions that it could still go. I don't think that it's you go to the site now and it's still up, so you never know what could happen.
yeah, anything else you want to share before we head out?
No, just go to, I mean, I'm accessible, available all the time at brett@featured.com. So drop me a note. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Check out featured.com. It's a freemium model, so you can answer 3 questions a month at no cost and see what happens. And then if you like what happens and you get featured in a bunch of different places, then you could consider upgrading to one of our paid subscriptions and answer unlimited different questions.
Yeah, it's hard to really overstate this. I tell people every time I'm speaking, if you're not going to pay someone like us to do the work for you, this is absolutely the best starting place because you guys make it with the interface, it's what we would have always wanted to get to. It's so accessible. The opportunities are in front of you. You're not asking, people commonly perceive they need to write full articles to achieve this. You're not at all. You're writing sound bites more or less. Like it's, and that's not meant to say that it's surface level. You do need to contribute expertise, but you guys make it as easy as possible to facilitate. So it's a great platform.
Hey man, we appreciate you using it. Yeah, and appreciate the opportunity to be on the show today.
All right. Thanks again for your time, Brett. Hopefully we reconnect.
Yep. Awesome. See you soon.